Moving on to the next agenda. For the next, we turn to the digital frontier with a keynote titled Navigating the AI Middle Way, a Strategic Path to Advancing Regional Digital Economies. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our next speakers as the Chief Executive National ICT Council, WANTIKNAS. Please welcome Dr. Ilham Akbar Habibie. Stage is yours.
Okay, so maybe it's not good morning anymore, so it's somewhere in between good day and good morning. Selamat pagi, selamat siang, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, I was told I'm supposed to give this in English. I will add something in Indonesian as well if needed, but I think I'll keep it in English because we have an international event here. So let me introduce myself. My name is Ilham Akbar Habibie, and I'm now currently in that already since 12 years now? Yeah, going more than 12 years, the chief executive of the so-called National ICT Council. I'll explain later what it is. Before all of that, let me just greet a few people here in the room, if they're present, of course. First of all, Dr. Ferry Irawan, the Deputy for Coordination of Management of State-owned Enterprises of the Coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs, and Mr. Dedi Wibowo, the Deputy Director for Digital Business and Sharing Economy Data Center, Pak Cahyo Purnomo, the Director for Investment Promotion for East Asia, South Asia, Middle East and Africa at BKPM, the Ministry of Investment, and also Ibu Sylvia Zuarni, the Acting CEO of Home Credit, and my friend Arif here in the first row, and everybody else that I'm sorry I don't mention one by one. Mohon maaf kalau tidak semuanya disebut. Baiklah, let's start my presentation. This is not something technical, okay? I will not bother you with anything technical, although I'm a techie, but today I will not talk about technology, but I will talk more about the concept, the underlying concept, what is necessary to understand if we want to use AI in a good and meaningful way. Okay, let me start to introduce myself again. Next slide, please. I was already introduced as the Chief Executive of WANTIKNAS, Dewan TIK Nasional. This is actually quite an old government body. It was established in 2006, 2006. I'm the fourth Chief Executive in line. My three predecessors were all ministers, and since 2014, so I've seen 4 governments now. I'm still there. I don't know, kind of like a dinosaur in the government space, but maybe, I don't know, it's just happened, and so I'm still there. And I report directly to the president, which I haven't met personally at all. I mean, not in the business or official level, but who I meet regularly is the Minister for Bappenas. He's basically the acting head for the so-called steering committee. And you can read yourself what we do. We are basically a consultative body. We give input to the central government, and they can do with it whatever they want to do. They can use it or not. I don't have any control about that, but at least I give the input. And the interesting thing about WANTIKNAS is that we are a multilateral body. So our members are not only from government, but they are from business, they're from academia, and they are also from so-called civil society organizations. Yeah? So like NGOs, professional organizations like Kadin or others. Yeah? There's a lot that participate in our events and our discussions. And we write up reports about that, and these are downloadable on our website, and also we distribute them through email and other means. Next slide, please, and this is very quickly. The vision of Indonesia, I don't want to say too much about this, you know of this, but you can see just by the look at it, that Indonesia is very well aware about the relevance and importance of technology. So all these big goals, call it human development, or sustainable economic development, or equitable development, governance and resilience, is much better to be achieved if we are mastering and applying technology. And today, Of course, I want to talk about AI. Seems to be in everybody's head right now. In Bahasa Indonesia, we call it akal imitasi. So it is clear to us. No, it's true. It's akal imitasi. Interesting. So it's like a simulation of a mind, which is not so wrong. Yeah? It's not the real mind, but it's a simulation. Anyway, can I have the next? Yang berikutnya, silakan. Okay. So basically, we are all aware of the fact, and I like to emphasize here, that AI has an impact for transformation. It says here regional, actually it's global. Yeah? But I want to talk regional because later I will show you that to understand this in a regional context is very, very important for us in Indonesia. So it has impact on economy, on government, society development, and of course the industry. So next slide, please. Right now, we have basically two AI superpowers. One is the United States, and the other one is China. They are very different in how they develop AI. Sangat berbeda. So the US basically explicitly says the government doesn't want to interfere. They leave it to the private sector to develop and see what the outcome is. If it's something dangerous, maybe they will do something with it, or they will, as we have seen, it's not completely true. Just a few weeks ago, we have seen the surprising act of President Trump. He forbid the use of Anthropic, one of the more advanced tools. I forgot which one it is. It's not Claude, but it's a more advanced professional version of their product. It's not allowed to use it if you are not American. Even if you work in the United States and you are not US citizen, you are not allowed to use it. So talking about no interference, right? Of course they interfere. But in order to develop AI, they leave it to the private sector and then they see what the outcome is and then they make a decision. So it's like intervention in hindsight, later, but not beforehand. In China, it's the other way around. Chinese government gives all the targets. They are very in control during the whole process. Nothing happens in China without the government controlling it. I'm not saying which one is better. I'm just telling you this is how it is. So what does it mean for us in Indonesia? We are neither an ally of the United States, nor are we an ally of China. We are friends with both, but with both. So what do? And I believe every other country in the world is like that. Yeah? There needs to be a middle way. That's what I want to propagate here. Itu yang saya mau menyampaikan. Harus ada jalan tengah. Tidak boleh hanya pemerintah yang total menguasai semuanya atau juga semuanya kita serahkan kepada sektor swasta. So we need to basically make sure that finding this middle way, being basically in the position to control certain parts of the outcome, but at the same time leaving enough flexibility to the private sector and also the state-owned sector, that will be maybe giving a better result. Can I have the next? Yang berikutnya, please. So you see here, there's a few key words. One is trust, capability, and the famous word sovereignty. We want to be sovereign in what we do. Can we really do it? Well, I think at the moment in Indonesia, not really. Even though we land all the data in Indonesia, but do we control all the data that is distributed along cloud computing servers around the world? No, we don't really, right? So, I mean, talking about data sovereignty is something very difficult to achieve, and I think we need to be smart about how to achieve it. But this is how it works. There's data, there's AI platforms, these create economic value, and then because of this, we have a certain dependency, ada ketergantungan. So what we need, can I have the next, please? We need this, what I mentioned before, the middle way. So a balanced way between innovation, governance, and public trust. So you see AI smack down in the middle of this chart, and around it are these things that are very, very important to look at and to control, and not control, to consider. Yeah? And we need to be aware that this influences the development of AI. Human values, human-centered design, governance, that innovation, of course, and lastly, very importantly, trust. Next, please. So in that regard, Indonesia is actually a very good case. I would say Indonesia is like a living laboratory. Indonesia itu kayak laboratorium sebetulnya ya. We did something already which is not perfect, but we are in it, digital ID. I mean, if you go out in Indonesia, we use these very nice, how can I say, the electronic gates, the e-gates. For some it works, for some it doesn't. So you can see it's not perfect yet. But we're building it, we're building it. And so digital ID is something very important. It's a basis of what this living laboratory can do. Then the curious system. Curious system is marvelous. I think now we have bilateral agreements with many countries around the world, particularly in the region. Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, even China. All of them are basically accepting case by case. Of course, it depends on the vendor, on the company, the QR code. And it reduces transaction costs to the degree that there are some companies in the world that really don't like this, like MasterCard and Visa. They complain about it, that their business has basically gone down because of that. But I think that's how things are. There's innovation happening, and as a company using a particular technology, you got to be aware that what you do is not there forever. There are technologies that can disrupt what you do. And that has happened throughout the history of mankind, so it's nothing new, actually. Then we have something like an INA Pass, Indonesia Pass, the PDP law. This is the private data privacy law, which is actually quite advanced. It has been modeled after the EU law, so it is at a high level. And the Sahabat AI, so there are Indonesian companies that would be Indosat. We have already started to do a more Indonesian-based AI. Yeah? So I think all of that shows that things are going step by step, they are going ahead. It's in progress. Of course, still a lot of things to do, but it's not that we are not doing anything. Yeah? So there are things happening, and I would say Indonesia is a nice living laboratory to see how things would work in a country of the size of Indonesia and in the complexity of Indonesia. This is what I call the digital public transformation. Can I have the next? So basically, AI readiness is actually built in layers. You can see these layers. I mentioned some of them before. You need the so-called digital public infrastructure. Maybe some of you are not aware of what does it really mean. What is a digital public infrastructure? At the moment, because Prime Minister Modi is here today, later I will be joining one of these events. There is something going on between the Indonesian and Indian government in terms of digital public infrastructure, which is basically called Indonesia Open Network. This is an example. Ini contoh. So basically, you can imagine you are a vendor, you're a small, medium-sized enterprise, you want to sell something to the general public. What do? Well, you become a partner of these big e-commerce platforms. Yeah? You sell it through Tokopedia, through Shopee. In the past, there was something like Bukalapak. It's not there anymore. Blibli and what have you. It's all nice. They have, I would call these concepts a walled garden. So if you are using that, then in many cases you have to use their tools. Yeah? Otherwise you can't do it for transaction, etc. And at the end you have to pay for it. Meaning to say the transaction cost for a small and medium-sized company using those e-commerce platforms is not small. In fact, it's getting bigger sometimes, yeah, because they are commercially driven and they want to make money too. All fair. But should there be an alternative? Yes. And the alternative, there has been a very interesting digital public infrastructure in India. And this platform actually makes it possible that let's imagine you are a driver of a car. You want to use your service to the general public, but you don't want to use Grab or Gojek. You want to do it directly. How do you do this? Well, in the future, and this is in work right now, you can use something like a digital public infrastructure. You basically use your network, use your identity to offer the services through this digital public infrastructure, basically a public e-commerce, yeah? Not owned by a private company, but public e-commerce. And many of the other public services like Curious and like others can be also bundled in a platform whereby this can be made available to the users, the seller and the buyer, and therefore the transaction will be possible without going through these walled gardens, what I mentioned before, the e-commerce platforms, and make it the whole transaction actually cheaper. And more people can participate from the growth, not just a few. So that is what I mean with digital infrastructure, and India and Indonesia are about to embark on a journey how to do things more together in terms of digital public infrastructure. The Indians have been quite good in that. Financial inclusion is thereby better upheld. I mean, because you make it available at a lower cost to more people. That's the real driver and the real motivation to do Curious is actually to include more people using digital technology to basically make it safer, faster, and also cheaper for them. Data protection goes without saying, without having data protection and basically the cyber security built in and protect you vis-a-vis cyber crime, all of this doesn't really work. AI governance, you can see, is at the top of the pyramid. So AI will be managing a lot of these rather automatically, and that needs to be designed in a good way, as I mentioned before. And at the top of the pyramid is, of course, all of us. We need to understand how we use AI in a good way. I mean, as every technology, everything comes with an advantage and with a disadvantage. So you can use any technology in a good way, but also in a bad way. Yeah? It's impossible to have only the benefit without being exposed to the risk of using the technology. And in that regard, you need literacy. That is something very important, and that starts at an early age, I think. Next. Want to talk a little bit, and I mentioned that before, about regions. So that is also something maybe most of us are not aware about, but just look at the lower part of the slide. So at the end of the year, akhir tahun ini, we might see the signing of the so-called Digital Economy Framework Agreement at the ASEAN Summit in Manila. What does it mean? It means that whatever is agreed in this Economic Framework Agreement, and it's quite a lot about data flow, about data protection, etc., becomes legally binding. If we sign this, it's the first digital economy framework agreement regionally in the world, earlier than the European Union, earlier than NAFTA, earlier than Mercosur, and every other regional bloc. That makes actually, as a digital economy player, the playing field larger, not only your own country, but the whole of ASEAN, which is almost 700 million people. Yeah? We should be aware about that. So the things that I'm projecting here, that I explain to you, have a relevance in a bigger context than just Indonesia. Indonesia is already 41% of ASEAN, but with this DEFA, hopefully to be signed at the end of the year, we make it even larger. Can I have the next? So basically, this is what we do if we use AI correctly. We convert data into innovation, business growth, and vision prosperity. I think no need to say more about this. Then next slide, please. The AI economy needs a full stack infrastructure, which consists out of, well, energy is part of the infrastructure. Why? You can imagine if we use AI more and more and more, then we will consume a lot of energy. Just to give you a little example. Let's say you pose a question, just a little one, you want to know something and you ask whatever AI machine you use. That AI machine starts to work. It works all the data it has and all the computer it uses. It consumes energy. What I learned from a friend of mine who is an expert in AI, he said, it's equivalent to the amount of energy you need to heaten up about a third glass of water. Just you have a normal water glass, maybe 400 milliliter or the 300 milliliter, a third of it heaten up until it boils. That's about the amount of energy you need just for one question. Now imagine you do something just for fun. In Indonesia, we would say iseng. Yeah? Just 10 questions, just to play. You consume energy a lot. And so basically, I think in the future, this will be a major driving criteria, is how much energy we really consume. We cannot just ask anything just for fun. Otherwise, we kill ourselves with overly needing energy that will also make things much worse regarding the climate, et cetera, et cetera. There needs to be a design criteria which is not clear yet. But I think energy is much more fundamental than people think. Then connectivity, of course. I mean, we need to be connected. In Indonesia, yes, we are. We claim to be connected. But we know also in our daily lives how frustrating it is sometimes to download just a simple file and suddenly the connectivity is gone. So talking about connectivity is one thing, but talking about quality of connectivity is another. Data centers. Well, in Indonesia, the truth is only 10%, 15%, maybe 20% of the data is stored in Indonesia. Most of it is floating somewhere around in the globe, which is not a problem in many cases, but it is a problem in some cases. I mean, you can imagine if you structure data, then there's like general data, data umum. Yeah? Like we have a WhatsApp conversation about the weather or about something we want to do on the weekend. It really doesn't matter what the data is. It's not really confidential. But talking about financial, wow, that's already confidential. Talk about military, even more confidential. So there are layers of different levels of data that need to be protected in a certain way, and that is something to be structured, and for that we need a certain amount of capacity in country. Then cloud computing is based on data center, of course, and then foundation models and applications is based on everything else. So that is all needed. Next, please. Yeah, so basically, in a way, what I like to say, the AI middle way should be three things. I want to just repeat it: sovereign, shared, and green. Next. Oops. Okay. So in that regard, we need to be aware that collaboration is key. Nobody can build AI the middle way alone. So there needs to be academia, industry, international partners, development banks. These are like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, etc. Communities, government, and all need to work together. And talking in the ASEAN context, it should be all ASEAN 11 countries, right? Next, the AI transition must be governed before the risk becomes structural. And you see the risks here, right? Vendor lock-in, it means closed infrastructure, and you're so dependent on this. Data colonialism, this is a very strong statement. Meaning to say that some people claim, I mean, that's another discussion to be had, but I think some people claim that we are facing right now is another form of neocolonialism, right? It's an extreme word, yeah? But that people they get the benefit of others to deliver the data for a relatively low value of money or even for free. But they get so much power to this that they have so much leverage over those people that those people are not even aware about this. So this is what I would call data colonialism. Then the digital divide. Can you imagine what will happen if there is, let's say there's two people. One has all the tools in the world and enough resources to use those. The other one doesn't have anything. And so using those tools, including AI, will make this person develop him or herself much faster. So there's the divide between those two people becomes so large that it is getting even more than it is today. Today we already have divide between different layers of society, but in the future the danger is that these divides will become even larger if you don't make those tools more available at low or no cost to many or most or all. Then there's a trust deficit. I talk about this more later. Fragmentation is clear, and the capability gap. The digital divide leads to a capability gap. So because the education is also more and more dependent on digital means, so if you have everything at hand, and it works well, then you have different possibilities than somebody who does not at all. Next. So basically, what we need to do is to build these three things. Can I have the next? Build trust, build capability, and build it together. Next. So the partnerships these are the partners that should collaborate here. There's UN, World Bank, and you can read all of it. ASEAN, Islamic Development, OECD, and universities, and others. Next. This, to my earlier statement, Indonesia should serve basically as a living laboratory. These are all the things that I mentioned before. We have the beginning of a digital public infrastructure. We have inclusive finance, data protection, yes, still to be improved. Regional collaboration, I mentioned DEFA before. And we have already the beginning of a local AI capability. Next. And we need these 5 executive actions in order to create our so-called regional digital economy. Governance, infrastructure, capability, the ecosystem, and of course, all of that needs to be sustainable. Well, this is the last slide here that I can present. Next. This is basically a strong statement made by my friend and partner. This is Professor Craig Smith from the US. He's basically working with WANTIKNAS already since 20 years. So before I was there as the chief executive, he was already partnering with WANTIKNAS. And he said something I think is very, very strong and very valid. The future of AI belongs to those who build trust. Yeah? Because trust is the underlying. I mean, you have to trust that person that this data will not be misused for other purposes, and you will be fairly treated, and everybody will get also the fair benefit of what we do together. I think that's all I have to say for today. Terima kasih atas perhatiannya. Mohon maaf kalau ada khilaf. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.